What I refer to as restriction is whenever the subject is limiting their guilt and responsibility. Listen to Nichole's multiple restrictions in the following.
You said earlier that he had never, or that the apartment wasn't for you and him. It was just for him and his children?
Oh, yes.
It wasn't. You had no intentions of moving in with him?
No. I have my own spot. I still have a lease there till July. And even then, like, he never asked me to move in with him.
Okay.
And I never tried to move in with him. I mean, I told him, I really try to take everything with this whole situation very slow. The only part that I screwed up on was the fact that he wasn't completely separated from her when him and I decided to spend time with each other. That is where I screwed up. But other than that, everything else, it was always like, you know, you build your life, I'm going to build my life, we will intertwine them, but I am not ready to, like, do this.
We hear the restriction,
the only part that I screwed up on,
immediately followed by another.
That is where I screwed up.
With vowel stress on that, indicating that this syntactically is the key word. We then get a third restriction beginning with the paratactic conjunction but.
But other than that,
the function of but is to negate that which preceded it. This means that Nichol negates the part about her screwing up to instead emphasize that she wanted the two of them to build separate lives. She's underlining a distance between them rather than the connection they evidently had. When a person's restricting the level of their involvement with a murderer, thus disassociating themselves from that murderer, they associate with the good guys instead. In this case, the general public or common sense, if you will. They want to show us that they're on the side of good. Listen to this.
And I'm like, so why don't we take our time? And I'm like, if you guys end up doing a week on, a week off with your kids, I'm like, the week you have your kids, be with your children. And the week that you don't, I'm like, I don't even want to see you every day. I'm like, I think we should spend like a few days of that together. I'm like, because I like my space and I think you need your space. I think you need your space to like develop your identity again and like get it back, because I think he's just been like...
Nichol's using direct quotes to paint a picture and draw us into her narrative. A narrative about how responsible and moral she allegedly was. Notice that Chris doesn't appear to have much say in anything in Nichol's narrative. I don't even want to see you every day, Nichole's supposed to have said to him. This is nothing short of a rejection of him. One final example of this.
And we talk about things every once in a while where I'd be like, hey, if I ever meet, because like I have a lot of house plants. That's a good example. So I have a lot of house plants, and I told him, I was like, one day if I ever meet your kids, I was like, I'm going to show these girls how to like paint pottery and plants. It was like, I think they would love to see something grow that they built. I think it would be really, really cute. And like little stuff like that, but it wasn't very frequent. It wasn't, hey, we should get married, and hey, we should have babies, and hey, I want to live with you, and hey, I need to meet your children now, and let's cut the mom out. It was never like that.
She's showing a high level of awareness here, countering almost everything that the general public or the detectives would otherwise accuse her of.
Hey, I need to meet your children now, and let's cut the mom out.
So indirectly, Nichol reveals to us that she knows what's right and what's wrong, and she says all this unprovoked. So this is obviously sensitive to her. Notice how she presumably gets lost in her own narrative about plants and pottery, but still makes sure to restrict it by saying,
but it wasn't very frequent.
Syntactically, she again makes the but sentence the most prominent one, that it wasn't very frequent.
And I knew that those two had been through some financial trouble. I definitely found out a lot more about that situation in the newspaper recently.
We noticed two things. Number one, Nichol's need to even mention Chris and Shannon's less than great financial situation. Number two, Nichol's happy-sounding tone of voice, which is contrapuntal, meaning there's a mismatch between the negative information and the delivery of that negative information. In the following, the detective wants to dig deeper, and notice how Nichol's answer involves the same kind of distance to both Chris and Shannon. Pay attention to her tone of voice.
Okay, so prior to the newspaper, how did you know he was in financial difficulty?
Because when I went to that house, everything in there is very, 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 very nice. It looks like it all comes with a very expensive price tag. And I didn't say anything to him about it, but I could kind of tell then where I was like just looking at everything like, how do you guys afford this? And
Nichole's also dramatizing for the detective.
So even if they're making, let's just use the figure $100,000, they're living above their means or below their
Oh my God, like
way too much.
Way
Did he ever
too
discuss?
First with her, and then using hyperbolic language.
Did he ever discuss?
Her next statement is more directly focused on Shanann.
He told me, he's like, I feel like my paycheck goes in my bank account and I just watch it go like this. He's like, but it doesn't have to. He's like, she makes it like that. And I was just
so was
like...
he resentful for that?
I don't know if he was resentful. I just think he was frustrated by the fact that they could be doing a lot better financially. And she, from the vibe that I got, had really bad spending habits. No.
So he's just got one vehicle.
Yep.
And it's a very expensive Lexus. And then they live in a pretty expensive house.
It's a huge house.
Yeah.
I was very taken back when I saw it. I was just like, whoa. How
and
do
then
you
the
guys...
fixtures inside caused you to pause.
Everything was just like...
He's allowing Nichol to further display her supposed shock.
Like I said, the only financial thing he ever said is just like, she just likes to spend money, like a lot of it. So that was just kind of the vibe that I got from that, and that it was a lifestyle that she liked to live, like very, like materialistic kind of lifestyle.
Wanted
like
to project
it was
a certain image.
Yes, all the time. I don't try to like interfere with how those two interact. But I did ask about it because I'm just curious, because I would never put myself in a situation where someone was like, you know what, we're going to live in this house that costs like double what we can afford, and that's how it's going to be because I want everybody to think we're fancy. Because I wouldn't do that. I mean, to me, like I wouldn't put up with somebody doing that to me.
I will argue that Nichol then becomes aware of the fact that what she's saying might be considered unemotional, because she chooses to modify.
And I'm not saying that that's what she was doing. I mean, for all I know, he could have been completely lying about this. He could be the one spending all the money.
Sure.
This
is just what he told you.
Exactly.
She presents the other side here, but in a lot less passionate and emphasizing way. Also, the modification is obviously not the first thing on her mind, since it appears late in her descriptions. Furthermore, she doesn't continue the modification. Instead, she continues emphasizing Chris's experiences with Shanann, again indirectly letting us know that this is the information that's sensitive to her.
From what it sounded like from their separation, from them trying to separate, that was a big deal for him, where he was saying that the reason that they don't really get along anymore is because he feels like he's not heard. He says that he comes home from work and he tries to talk to her and she'll just be like, 1 minute, I'm on the phone. Or she'll like scroll through social media and she like doesn't acknowledge him.
This one you were a little bit more, you said he's with 2 women. Was that one of your considerations for not telling anybody about him?
Yes, well, I mean, it was like, okay, like this, to me it wasn't going to be an extended thing. Like if it got to the point where we were like dating for like 3 or 4 months and he's still talking about, oh, I'm going to move out and I'm going to sell the house, I think at that point I probably would have just been like, I don't think you're really like doing these things you say you're going to do. And I probably would have just like left, because at that point it's not fair.
Notice the mismatch between question and answer. Nichol was asked in past tense about a particular reason for not telling anybody about Chris. She starts with agreeing, but then modifies her response with the hedge "I mean" that signals probability, not certainty. She continues weakening her assessment with the following conditional clause, suggesting something hypothetical. This weakening of her statement continues with the hedges "I think" and "probably," which is repeated twice before the modal verb "would have." At that point, linguistically moves the goalpost, underlining the hypothetical nature of a statement. These weak modifiers and expressions of uncertainty are known as equivocation. Equivocation is a way for the subject to avoid the question, and it's non-committal, meaning it allows the subject to modify the statement later on without directly contradicting the original statement. Nichol's and Chris Watts' overuse of "like" is also in this category. Notice Nichol's fictional dialogue. These aren't real quotes, but imagined quotes. Nichol's excessive use of this kind of vivid language shows us that she's aware of what she should have said to Chris according to societal norms. But let's not forget that she didn't. It's a linguistic self-defense mechanism. However, as we've just seen, she even makes this mechanism unsure by her equivocating language. Indirectly, she's admitting how much she did and would have let Chris get away with. Obviously, he meant and still means a lot to her.
It wasn't fair to me in the first place. It wasn't fair to her in the first place. It wasn't fair to any of us in the first place. You know, it wasn't fair to his family for him to have an affair. It wasn't fair to me to have him lie to me and make me think that everything is going to plan. And still to this day, I don't even know what's a lie and what's not. I don't even know if they were like filing for divorce. I don't even know anymore what is real and what is not.
Shanann's referred to as her. This type of distance taking typically suggests that the subject deep down has some level of guilt and or know that they have a prominent role in the case. Either way, Nichole's showing us that mentioning Shanann's name is too personal for her. Notice how she aligns with Shanann with the word fair, as if the level of unfairness was the same for the both of them. Any of us is association. Here, Nichol goes from singular descriptions to collective ones. By portraying herself as a victim, she acquits herself of blame and responsibility. Nichole's protecting herself, much like we saw with her equivocating language, just in a more extreme way, protecting herself from further questions and further responsibility.
What I do know is it's just like, you know, that wasn't fair to me either, because if I'd have known not even all the truth, but like obviously some of it, I wouldn't have even engaged in any of this in the first place. And it just, I mean, and that's the part for me, just like on my personal level, outside of everything that is happening, that is gonna affect me long term. It's like, you know, I'm gonna wake up every day and know that like this mom and her unborn child and these two little girls are not around anymore, and it breaks my heart. It is so, oh my God. And then I have to think about like the consequences of his actions and how they affect everybody else. Like,
syntactically, Nichol reveals that her primary concern is herself. She started with mentioning how it wasn't fair to her, then Shanann, and now she's back to herself. Notice the verb engaged. To engage in something presupposes that there's something to participate in the first place. She doesn't say started or another verb that indicates that she helped bring the situation about. Any of this is unspecified. She avoids saying affair or another specific word, and she's again distancing herself from her personal decisions.
You know, they're going to say, oh, you know, you're the woman that had an affair with this man who took out his whole family. And I take a step back and it's just like, I didn't know. Like, he's so disgusting. I'm so ashamed of him and everything. And I just, oh, those little girls. They're so little. They're so little.
Two things. First, even when she brings herself to use the word ashamed, she doesn't mention herself. She's taking on the role of the general public by portraying Chris as disgusting. The agent asked a short question, and Nichole's overexpanded answer doesn't correspond to it. It's not because Nichol provides a lot of detail. She just provides a lot of hypotheticals that are masked as details. This results in a lot of red herrings. Confusion for the agents. Nichol cries for a short while.
It's so sad, and she's pregnant.
And you don't want to.
Then she continues making excuses for herself.
Let's get to the phone call on Saturday from 9 to 11. What did you guys, or pardon me, on Sunday from 9 to 11?
Yeah, we talked a few times. So, Sunday,
Okay.
I think so. I need to think. I can't even think.
Take a couple breaths and take a second.
Sunday night. I don't even know. I don't think I was like concerned about anything at that point.
Nichole's equivocating. She gives herself leeway to modify her statements at a later point in case she suddenly does remember something she was concerned about.
You guys had had a meal, a nice meal the night before. You knew his wife was probably coming home late that evening.
Oh, you know what? I still don't remember what we talked about. I like, honestly, like, we talk about so much random stuff. Like, it's so hard to pinpoint some of these things. I don't remember what we talked about. I do remember that was a long phone conversation, though. We probably talked about all sorts of stuff.
She's answering the question with a question. She's already tried to avoid the question, and now she's trying to avoid it again. Also, the use of honestly should make us ask, why the use of it now? Is it because the subject hasn't been truthful or entirely truthful up until now? Notice a way of phrasing it. It's so hard to pinpoint some of these things. First, there's a lack of self-reference, which would have made her answer more direct. She doesn't use I, but it, as if pinpointing these things is more or less objectively hard. Second, some of is restricted language, again giving her a chance to remember the things that are convenient for her and to leave out the rest. She says probably, which typically suggests that the subject will now provide details. However, Nichol just ends up saying all sorts of stuff, which is obvious and void of specifics. She continues restricting her memory to one thing. This way she can keep bringing up singular memories that fit her narrative. Keep in mind that previously in this interview, Nichol's been very detailed about specific conversations she's had with Chris.
And I remember talking to him about it, and that was the first time that I tried to actually say, what do you think about not separating from your wife? Like, what if you really try to work on this? And he had expressed to me that we've tried to work on this and it's not working, so that is why we're separating. I'm engaging in a relationship with a man who, the way he described it, is in a contractual agreement, but was not in like an emotional relationship with somebody.
In the following, notice that Nichol does remember specific thoughts.
One thing I do remember though, that I didn't remember earlier when I was talking to Mark, so this is like where I'm starting to remember like little bits and pieces. I don't remember, yeah, I know. So the phone conversation, I don't remember what was in the phone conversation, probably nothing of relevance to be honest with you, but usually he talks to me when he's like down in the basement in his bed before he goes to bed and before I go to bed. And I could hear the TV on, which I thought was kind of weird. I didn't ask him, I just heard it in the background. And I remember thinking, and it was like right before we got off the phone, I was like, why the hell is he up? And there's like no TV downstairs, so I was like, well maybe
Again, she's using unnecessary language that weakens the truthfulness of her statement. Usually implies that there were times that deviated from the conduct she's describing. This points to withheld information, whatever it may be.
So what you texted me about 2 a.m. and said that you remembered some other information. What did you remember?
Like just kind of odds and ends. And I'm sure there will be more as this goes on. I interacted with him so much that sometimes like I just have to stop and think about how much information that I have gotten from him over the last few months and the last week or so, and like I said, I never know what's true and what's not anymore.
Sure.
But I figured I'll just give you guys everything I have, and hopefully I don't have to keep calling you back with more, but no promises.
No, that's okay. Please do. Like I told you yesterday, anything that comes to mind that you think is important, I'd like to know.
Kind of is a hedge, weakening the idea that it's just odds and ends she remembers. This is Nichol's first downplaying of the information she has, indicating it's of little value. She doesn't say maybe, she's sure there will be more information. We underline a word like this, because it may suggest that the subject has more information in this moment than they let on. As an agent, you should be alert to a statement like this. On one level, it's a self-protective stance, giving the subject leeway to not commit to the truth, leeway to sound vague. On another level, however, it indicates a high probability of unreliable accounts. Everything I have ends a preface. Most answers have prefaces, initial statements leading up to the real answer. As human beings, we're rarely direct. We seek to present ourselves in a certain way, whether we're conscious about it or not. In Nichol's case, she presents herself as an honest participant on one hand, supposedly not having anything to hide. But on the other hand, she also knows it's more than okay for her to call back. So she's telling the agent what he wants to hear. And now he's put in a position where he's reassuring her that it's okay. In the following, notice how Nichol ingratiates herself with the agent in something that seems like an informal, casual conversation.
That's anything that he said to you or anything that stands out to you as you're reflecting on all this kind of mess here is important for me to know.
Understood. Couple things. So one, I went back and I tried to like find whatever text you were talking about between my friend Charlotte and me with the eHarmony thing, and I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
If you, and I mean, her and I text so much though, so like if you find it and you show it to me, let me know, but it's just like, I mean, I was on that site, but it was never like worth it for me, so.
Thing, as a so-called countable noun, is used to refer to the dating website in a vague manner, suggesting that it's not very important, though is Nichole's indirect way of admitting that the text the agent's looking for may actually exist. Just like her use of hedges, this is self-protective and self-serving. She says but twice in this short passage. As a paratactic conjunction, but minimizes that which precedes it. When we also consider her last utterance, it's evident that Nichol doesn't want to be associated with this website.
It wasn't really something that I ever discussed with her. However, when I was going back through there, I did realize that I had offhandedly mentioned to her a little bit about Chris. I didn't tell her that I was how deep the rabbit hole went on that, I guess you could say, but it was kind of vague, and she was asking a lot of questions at that point, but it was just oh, you know what, I did say something to her.
The function of adverbs is to modify verbs, strengthening or weakening them. Here, really weakens the idea that it wasn't something they discussed, so really comes across as a linguistic self-defense mechanism. Like is a recurring word in Nichole's language, so we could be inclined to say that this is just how she speaks, but notice that it serves as hedging here, moderating disgust so that she's free to take this definition back at a later point if necessary. These are all small points, but combined they form a pattern. However, is an adverb with a modifying quality to it rather than the flat contrast which the conjunction but connotes. With however, she's modifying the assertion in the preceding clause, so she avoids making it sound like she's contradicting herself. However, she is indeed modifying, indicating there's another level to what she stated. So she found it important to first protect herself, and second, draw conclusions for the agent. Now Nichole's preface to the real answer is done. Let's find out what she supposedly realized. I did realize signals resistance towards admitting this. She uses did as an auxiliary verb to realize. Realize connotes a process. She doesn't just plainly say she saw it, but advances it. Offhandedly suggests a presumed lack of interest or careful thought. So again, Nichole's downplaying the importance of her utterance. This is a well-established pattern by now. A little bit is minimizing language. These are extra words which are thus extra sensitive for the subject apparently. It's unnecessary language because it doesn't take away from the fact that she mentioned Chris to her friend. So the function of these words is self-protection and probably also to advise the agent not to talk to her friend. Her self-repair serves a purpose as self-repairs typically do. She interrupts herself to say the euphemizing metaphor, how deep the rabbit hole went. Euphemisms are by definition unreliable, and they indicate distance to the word they replace, the actual word, so to speak. Either Nichol hasn't fully admitted her role in the affair to herself, or she tries to present herself in a more positive light to the agent, or both. I guess you could say it shows us that Nichole's aware that this way of phrasing it is an alternate one, not the actual word. Vague is prefaced with the hedge kind of, which may suggest that it wasn't so vague after all.
You guys, I think I just looked at the messages, and there was some little bit of conversation regarding, he's got kids. There was some conversations about some sexual related stuff, and that was about it. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's it. But I mean, I did mention it to her, and honestly, we've talked since then, and I haven't even mentioned him, and that girl's so wrapped up in everything that's going on in her life. I don't even think she realizes what's going on in the news. Okay. I don't even think she's going to connect the dots. I would be surprised. I honestly am convinced that if I don't say a word about it, I bet you she won't even bring him up.
Okay.
And even if she did, if I was just he's not around anymore in my life, I don't even think... I'm not concerned about her.
Okay. And the only concern I had there is there seemed like there was some conversation about a boyfriend, and it doesn't seem like, so you were actually talking to her about Chris, not a boyfriend. I went back through those texts. I'm like, what is he talking about? I don't see anything about eHarmony. I mean, and if it's in there, maybe it is, and I just missed it. But okay.
It's
Multiple times Nichol emphasizes negative verbs with even. One of these is different. This is used to highlight the improbability that her friend has anything useful to say. Nichol's directing and almost instructing the agent on what to think. Concerned is an interesting verb choice. She brings up the topic of concern and lets us know that she may be concerned with what her friend has to say. Notice Nichol's perspective again. She finds it important to stress that she has to look back on these things, which linguistically eliminates the possibility that she has concealed this piece of information. Those points to distance, which matches her "what is he talking about?" It's obviously sensitive to her to apply distancing language to remove herself from Chris and this dating side as much as possible. As a hedge, I mean, again weakens her preceding statements. While maybe it is and I just missed it, on one hand frees her from accountability, while on the other hand reveals that she is indeed concerned about this, since she keeps negotiating with herself linguistically.
No, I don't know.
It's not all that important. It's not all that important. So we can move past that. What else?
On Monday night, so a couple things. I told you he had like texted me, and then at the end of the night, he had called, or I had called. I think he called me, but either way, we were on the phone with each other. And like at some point when we were on the phone, he was like, "Do you want to FaceTime?" And I remember I was laying in bed, and I was just like, you know what? Okay, let me turn on the light. And I remember I turned on the light, and we FaceTimed. And when we FaceTimed, he didn't really say much. Like, it was almost kind of awkward. I don't even know why I didn't think of this earlier, but it was very short too. It was super brief. And
like, what's short?
She starts out with minimizing language again. Verbs are inserted for a reason, and it happens within milliseconds. Here, remember is an unnecessary word, because we already know she's describing a past event. It's repeated 3 times in a shorter passage. Remember shows us that Nichole's aware of 2 levels. A present level, her talking to the agent, and a past level, her talking to Chris. In this context, remember has a self-protective function. It limits what she's saying to what she remembers, giving her leeway to not remember certain things until she either remembers them or until it's convenient and necessary for her to remember them. As we've seen in a previous video with Nichol, this is a recurring theme.
That information, when you look backwards in your memory with the conversations with Chris, anything that he might have said that would be relative to... Do you understand what I'm
No,
looking
I
for?
completely understand. I just feel like some of this happened so long ago that I can't tell you like the exact words of the exact conversation at the exact time and place, because it's like we had a lot of conversations. I mean, we talked every single day. So it's like I'm trying to help you guys with the stuff like the stuff that's more current. I can give you guys a lot more like detail and exact times. But when you're asking me about something that happened 6 weeks ago and exactly what was said, it's like, I mean, I'm sure I can give you a general idea, but to be honest with you, like to pinpoint exact words, it's not going to happen.
I'm not looking for exact words. Just more, let's say 6 weeks ago he said something that...
Didn't is noteworthy. Instead of telling the agent what Chris said, she's telling the agent what Chris didn't say, thus downplaying it. In general, people are concerned with what someone said, not what they didn't say. So stating this in the negative is sensitive and calls what she's negating into question. Really, again, weakens the assertion that he didn't say much. Even indicates surprise, that it's unexpected she didn't remember this. Even has an emphasizing function. What follows but is the syntactic and semantic focus of what a person wants to say. Here it's used to excuse the fact that she allegedly didn't think of this earlier, and she gets the opportunity to overemphasize the short duration of the FaceTime conversation.
Less than 5 minutes. I think it was only like a couple of minutes.
Okay.
And I think we were like talking a little bit, but he was laying down on a mattress that didn't have any sheets on it. And I was like, okay. So I was thinking like, well, maybe he's in bed. I don't know what's up. But I remember asking him like, where's your sheets, you know? And he's like, oh, I washed them. And then this is the part I don't remember if this sentence right here came in this FaceTime conversation or if it came in a phone conversation prior to the FaceTime conversation, but regardless, this next sentence came on Monday night, and I'm so sorry that I cannot, always remember chronological every little detail.
That's okay, it's understandable.
Nichol says she's so sorry, and on a surface level, it may seem like an apology, but notice how she frames it. It's a given that no one's able to always remember every little detail. No one's expecting that from her. The interesting thing is that Nichol brings it up herself, making it sound like an appeal to be pitied for having to remember so many things. So is she really sorry? No, she's not, but she's comforted by the agent nonetheless.
There's so much. But I remember he was saying that he was cleaning the house to try to keep busy, to take his mind off of things. And this was on the phone. And and it was kind of late when he was doing it. And I didn't honestly think that much about it originally because that man is always cleaning. He's a very, very organized, meticulous, clean individual. He's the type of guy that will vacuum his whole house one week, and if there's rooms that don't get used, he'd vacuum again the next week just because it's part of his routine.
There's so much suggests certainty about a considerable amount of information that she knows but hasn't said yet. She doesn't weaken it with an adverb like probably or something similar. That man reinforces the distance she tries to create to Chris even though the two were close. While the last part of this passage is her once again excusing why she didn't react to what he said. That she didn't react to this is understandable. Most people wouldn't react to information about cleaning. What's interesting though is that she keeps mixing essentials with non-essentials. In a conversation like this, it can have a deflecting purpose. It's difficult for an agent to keep track of the essential information.
And you think this was Monday night? What time do you think it was Monday night?
Oh God, I don't even know. I almost wish you guys would show me my phone.
So I'm gonna read.
People want to tell the truth. So even though she uses almost to tone down her wish, I believe this is exactly what she wants. Getting the phone records would strengthen the consistency of her explanations. Also, this statement points to her indeed being concerned. The concern she negated but nonetheless brought up previously.
I completely understand. I just feel like some of this happened so long ago that I can't tell you the exact words of the exact conversation at the exact time and place because it's we had a lot of conversations. I mean, we talked every single day. So it's I'm trying to help you guys with the stuff the stuff that's more current. I can give you guys a lot more detail and exact times. But when you're asking me about something that happened 6 weeks ago and exactly what was said, it's I'm sure I can give you a general idea, but to be honest with you, to pinpoint exact words, it's not going to happen.
I'm not.
She says she can't tell the exact time, the exact conversation, but no one mentioned the word exact but her. She emphasizes it's not gonna happen, which is a strong stance before the questioning even begins. Although at a later point she claims she really wants to help the detectives.
I really want to help you guys. I do. I feel like I'm...
You often see this in these kinds of police interviews. To avoid guilt by association, the subjects initially stating that they won't be able to remember much, in case they're intimidated by the specificity of the questions. But as we'll see later on, Nichol remembers quite a bit.
I'm sure I can give you a general idea, but to be honest with you, to pinpoint exact words, it's not going to happen.
I'm not.
Prefaces like this, where the subject feels the need to say they're being honest with you, are always interesting. They're not necessarily deceptive, even though many times they are. They tell us that the subject is very self-aware and very aware of the person they're speaking with. Honesty is presupposed in conversations, so logically, there's no reason to mention that you're being honest. It's meta-communication, language that's on the outside, looking in. To be honest with you forms a pattern in Nichol's language, and we hear it multiple times during the interview. This is another example of it.
What did that cause you to do with your phone, though?
Oh, what? When I deleted those? I was just kind of grossed out by him, to be honest with you. I was just I don't know what's going on.
So even though no one's expressed doubt about Nichol's explanation, she's using language that seeks to convince.
So during June and July, were you aware that his family was not? Did you meet his children?
So the detectives asked a short question, but noticed Nicole's lengthy answer.
Nope, I didn't want
June
to,
and July.
and he didn't ask me to.
Okay.
I mean, not that I didn't want to ever. It was just not now. It's like you're not finalized with your separation, and not only that, we've barely been dating. Like, you can't introduce kids to somebody new in a situation like that. That's something that takes time. I mean, would I have liked to have met them? Of course. That would have been a great honor for me to have somebody introduce their children into my life, but not then. It was something that it was like, okay, well, let's see where we're at in 6 months. Let's see where we're at in a year. And if we're still doing this and you and me are still, happy with where we're at, and you think that this is something that is going to be long term and is worth bringing your children into the picture, then yes, I would love to meet them. But it's like, not right now. You are still in this situation where you're not even completely out of it, and I'm getting in it, and that's not fair for them. And that was kind of the policy that I had with him, it was just like, yes, but not yet.
Her answer contained self-praise, even though the question didn't call for this. In police interviews, you always look for unmotivated self-praise, when the subject's trying to present themselves in the best light possible. In Nicole's narrative, her presumed recollection of events, she comes across as a responsible person, as opposed to Chris. Her talking points mimic the ones of the general public. She's taking on the role of the general public. She even says she had a policy.
So the second time I went to that house, I'm not sure what day it was, but it was the weekend of the 14th.
Of August?
July. I don't know if it was the 14th or the 15th. One of those 2 days.
We learn here that Nichol does remember details. It's interesting that the detective asks her if she's talking about the month of August and not July, because earlier Nichol said she wouldn't remember exact dates from long ago. Maybe the detective took her up on that. In the next excerpt, we should also pay attention to Nicole's good memory, and we should consider how she portrays herself.
But we had went out and we stopped there just real quick on the way back. And we were there not very long, but that time I saw a picture of his wife and one of his kids. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, she's so beautiful. And I took a step back and I was just like, this man has a gorgeous house. He has beautiful babies. He has a beautiful wife. He has an awesome job. Like, why would he want to leave this? And I remember talking to him about it, and that was the first time that I tried to actually say, what do you think about not separating from your wife? Like, what if you really try to work on this? And he had expressed to me that we've tried to work on this and it's not working, so that is why we're separating.
She portrays herself as someone who tried to save Chris's marriage. The details she gives also anticipate the objections that the general public has to her actions. So there's a rather strong self-serving purpose to her alleged memories. We should always point out self-praise and its context, or especially lack of context. Let's hear the last part one more time.
And he had expressed to me that we've tried to work on this and it's not working, so that is why we're separating.
Here she's practically quoting Chris, which suggests that her words in the beginning of the interview, that she wouldn't remember exact words and exact conversations, were an act of self-defense, because she seems to remember almost perfectly.
And I spent some time, just, kind of, because it almost made me feel bad, where I was, to the point where I'm engaging in a relationship with a man who, the way he described it, is in a contractual agreement, but was not in, an emotional relationship with somebody.
The basic premise of language analysis is that people want to tell the truth, even when they're being deceptive. Lying is stressful for the brain. That's why the truth is dropped in small bits and pieces. So when Nichol uses the adverb almost in "it almost made me feel bad," I believe her. When we really feel bad for someone, it's an overwhelming feeling, that only a few of us would describe as almost feeling bad. Listen to the last part again.
I'm engaging in a relationship with a man who, the way he described it, is in a contractual agreement, but was not in like an emotional relationship with somebody.
In a subtle way, and with a significant pause before saying it, she makes Chris responsible for the definition of the affair the two were having. There's a high level of blame shifting that would be interesting to investigate further. Furthermore, she clearly remembers how he described it. So once again, she's being very specific.
And for me, the way I would have preferred to do this is to have waited till that contractual agreement was also done, and he was done. And he could have approached me and said, I'm just had a divorce, maybe we could take this slow. What do you think?
Nichol makes it sound like she wanted a different arrangement with Chris than the one he described. But next we hear her admitting that she didn't wait for him to get a divorce.
But instead it was, we're separated and we're working on a divorce. And that is the part that I feel bad about, because I should have waited on that and I didn't.
Later on, she repeats that she urged him to try to get his marriage to work.
It just seemed like he had so much going on, and it was just beautiful, that I was like, why don't you just try this out, and see if you can fix it. And he'd always be like, well, what about us? What about us? I'm like, don't worry about us. Like, that is more important. Like, try to see if you can, salvage whatever it is that you have going on with your wife.
In light of all of this, it makes sense that the detective asks if she reflected on her actions then, or if she reflects on them now.
I just thought he had a beautiful life going on, and he could have made it work. That was the way I looked at it from the outside.
So, is this something you reflected on since this event, or was this you?
No, I was doing it then.
There's some confusion here. Was she really as reasonable at the time as she presents herself to have been?
And that is the part that I feel bad about, because I should have waited on that, and I didn't.
Previously, Nichol said she almost felt bad, and now she says this is the part that she feels bad about. She's restricting her experience. When you limit your guilt or remorse to a part that you feel bad about, you implicitly state that there are other parts, and perhaps bigger parts, that you don't or shouldn't feel bad about. So this way of phrasing it could suggest that her guilt and remorse are not overwhelming, and that her statements are thus of a more self-serving nature.